Hello, everybody. Today, we'll talk about Effector, which is a reactive state manager, dive into it, and still stay alive. Oh, my presentation won't work. I guess I should make a few key points about it. Starting from stores must be as light as possible, since conceptually any app could be divided by responsibility scopes like authorization, payment form, routing, and etc. From my point of view, there should be not less than one store per responsibility scope. Quick note, these mini stores should be easily combined as well. The second point is declarativeness, because we just need to point out what is connected, not how is connected. Because Effector provides really rich possibilities in terms how connecting units. I said units. Last but not the least, effectiveness. I guess some of you might think, what are you talking about? But this point means a lot. For example, Effector does not need any extra libraries to provide memorization mechanisms like reselect, since it notifies only stores which should be updated. As well, it relies on nothing except from functions and objects. I mean, no classes, no decorators, no proxies, because we just don't need it to build a state manager at all. And also, worth to mention that the library avoids any breaking changes even in measure releases, since keeping it comfortable and predictable for the users is a kind of major priority. And worth to mention on the top that measure releases are scheduled once per year. And this library has pretty predictable API, and I'll show it to you a bit later. Here I built a small visualization for application business logic. Imagine like our business logic is a 3D object. And then this is a view from the top. This example demonstrates stimulus over the time for our entry points in app. And the idea is that any application could be represented as a discrete event flow. I'm pretty sure that Dirt Gently won't lie to us, because everything is connected, for sure. And we saw the view from the top, like top, and now we see the view, the front one. I placed a metaphor for it. So lightning rays illustrate UX scenarios. Effector just asks user to statically initialize all the scenarios across the application. So going back to picture, our front end will wait only for external stimulus to run the lightning strike, since the form is already here. To start our technical introduction, we'll need to acknowledge one thing. Effector has 3 basic units. First one is an event, not an action. I think this is important since our system, in terms of business logic, the whole system across the application, receives stimulus, or I guess we should better call it messages, and just reacts to them, not act by itself. I placed here an import from an effector. On the following slides, I'll just drop any imports, since every operator or constructions they'll see in future that they are directly imported from Effector, the same as a create event. An event is just a function that represents an intention. It could either have payload or not, depends on declaration. I tried out to build as much visuals as I can. This is an event in our virtual space. And this is a mapped event. Let's just have an example. We declared an event and created a mapped event based on that, which just doubles the value. It's needed when we just need to transform our event payload without leaving the context. I guess everybody could imagine an input where we set an estimation for the feature delivery. The developer just set a value and the mapped event will work out like a manager, just double the estimation value. No offense intended. This is just about covering the risks. And I just worth to mention, doubled event will be triggered just after. Going further, we would not survive without stores, since we need to store our values across the application lifespan. And store is the second unit. Here we just declare the store with an initial value, which is an empty array, declared an event called watched show. That means I send a message. I watched the show, and the show store illustrates my watch list, which I have already watched. So, and on the bottom we see a reaction. The API in that example is pretty close to Redux Act. Instead of strings, we have a link to an event and store React on that. And the second argument is a reducer. And interesting to know that if store returns the same value as the previous one, the update won't be triggered. This one just helps out our performance. So I built a visualization for that as well. Event occurred, and store just reacts on that. And did you remember I talked about predictability? The store has the map method as well. That means mapped store. I just have a store called my age. I'm 26, and I created a map store which tells me, am I legal to buy any alcohol or not? So this one will be updated only then the original store will be triggered. So here's a visualization for it. Being closer to the last of 3 units, the most important one in terms of understanding, in my opinion, I'll start with a philosophical mystery. Do we hear the sound of a fallen tree in the forest if no one is nearby? Is it possible to consider that the non-observed world functions in the same way as the observed world? In other words, being closer to our reality, function pureness depends on observer position. For example, any function produces a side effect on overall performance of your processor. So that's why Effector offers a unit that explicitly identifies a function that has side effects for the level of business logic. This is important. We just set an observer position, business logic. This unit is called effect. As for code example, I implemented I would say the most common example for side effects, network requests. But that's not all. I mean, timers, third-party APIs, I mean, everything what could throw an exception should be wrapped into an effect. It's very important, since the business logic should have no any exceptions at all. We need to catch every of them and the build a scenario based on failed effect. Here's the visualization. It's an effect. When it's called, the store field called pending is set to true. I made an animation that means it's running. As soon as effect is resolved, it emits a couple of events. In the first case, it's done event, which means effect has been resolved successfully, and finally event, which means effect just has been resolved. And the pending store in that case is set to false. Another case, when effect emits two events called fail and finally. Finally is the same one, and the fail means effect has been resolved with an error. Pending is still false. Being closer to code is the field done. It's an event which called with params and result fields. Params means an arguments which effect has been called with, and result means the return value of a handler inside it. Finally, event will be called with any of that params, and the fail event will be called with params again, which is an argument, and an error field, which is like an error exception with what the effect has been thrown. Worth to mention that even if we have a synchronous exception, not only a asynchronous one, we should wrap it into effect as well. And now we finished with the basic units and going to the forward. This is an operator which helps you to connect any type of units between themselves the same way as event map did, but forward helps you to connect units from different semantic values. For example, travel and quarantine. Quarantine means sitting at home for 2 weeks. Travel means traveling around all the city, all mountains and stuff. They really different by its semantic value, but the now time has come, and as soon as we travel, we need to be set at the quarantine. So that's why we directly connect these two units. It's looking something like this. As soon as the from field has been triggered, the to field will be triggered as well. Let's move to more complicated things. The second operator called guard is needed when we need to not directly connect a couple of events or a couple of units, but conditionally connect them. The key field here is filter one. As soon as the filter field is set to truthfully value, the source unit it just takes the value from the source unit, put it into the target one, and trigger it. So that means as soon as I am legal to buy an alka, we just take the payload from the event called want to buy alka and pass it to the target one, actually bought an alka. Sorry for an example, I'm just sitting home, not leaving it for a while. So here's an example. And here's a visualization of how it works. We have a bool store or a function in a filter field. As soon as the filter returns false value, we have something like this. No connection between source and target. No connection. And in terms, if everything went good, we just connect them. Now we reached out the most complicated part. The mechanism of linking two units and resulting them into the third one, called sample. I picked pretty common example for it. If on the previous example with the guard, key field was the filter one, but now clock field is the king of the mountain. Since the operator will work only if the unit in clock field was triggered, event has been called, store update has been triggered in terms if clock will be a store one, or effect has been called, doesn't matter. So as soon as the clock field is triggered, it just takes the payload from the source, and in the simplest case, just pass it to the target one. But here we have not the simplest one. We still have an optional FN field, which is a combinator function, which lets us to pick a payload from the source and pick the payload from the clock as well. Transform that into something new and return it. Maybe just combine two payloads, whatever you want. And with the return value of an FN function, target unit will be triggered. I pointed out the clock field via dotted line. It just triggers. And the source and clock units are resulting the target one. Back in the day, sometimes, or I would say anytime, I had to stick together business logic and view layer. As David mentioned before regarding the event listeners, for example, or component did mount. But now these times are gone. Congratulations, the audience and me with that event. Here I provided some links. First one to reach me out directly via Telegram. Second one for reaching out the English-speaking community of Effector, still on Telegram. Third link, I prepared for Odessa.js, I guess a week ago, a workshop. Video haven't still arrived yet, but here you can see a repo for the live example of a code with an effector. It contains it divided by chapters, so any of you could just run through the pull requests and just see the difference. Fourth link is an official site of an effector, which contains documentation and API and so on. And the last one is the Patreon of an after, if you just values what he has done. So you can just support him. And it's not the end. Since the David attended with the actor thematic, I decided to put 2 extra slides for you. So let's just sit through. I intentionally avoided the word called domain. I used responsibility scopes, as you remember, because Effector provides you domain itself as a namespace for events, stores, and effects. Why do we need it? Just to have an ability to hook store creation, domain creation. We could create subdomains as well, to hook event creation or to hook event creation. In terms of effect, what could be it useful for? We just have the one place where we could handle all effects across the application, all the failed scenarios. For example, if our app is pretty simple and we just need to show up the same toaster across the whole application, and I guess we have 10, let's say, network requests in case of fail, we definitely need to show up the toaster with the same message. And instead of forwarding from the fail fields from an effect to the event which will show up a toaster, we could just make it into one place and reduce our code base a bit. And the pretty important example as well. Here's an example of the test. You could see it into the repo. I did not prepare it really well since I added it half an hour ago, but I just wanted to share it with you. So we just prepared some payload and fork the domain. That means that we created a virtual instance of that domain and write it down into the scope variable. And we just run this domain just receives a message called sign in, aka an event. It's actually an event, and runs all the computations which are following the sign in event. I guess David could answer me what scope is. It's an actor. Thank you so much for watching me. That's it.
Thank you so much, Jan. That was really enlightening. So we have a couple of questions, and I hope you're ready because you're not off the hook yet. I hope you're ready for this. Okay. Okay. So the first question is there a connection point between Xstate and an effector? Like, how are they similar / different?
I haven't done any research on that field yet. I just didn't try to compare them somehow. I just recently watched the David's speech at Holy St. Petersburg, where I lived actually and live till now. And I just got some pretty common ideas.
Yeah.
So I could say only in terms of idea, these two libraries could have something in common, but in terms of implementation, they are different.
Yeah. I think they mean in terms of ideas. Like, how do they connect in terms of ideas? Like the two.
Yeah.
Similar.
I just tried to show up the idea from the very beginning. I used this graphics lightning strikes because lightning is a really good metaphor for application graph, I guess.
Okay, so the next person has go.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. No, go.
Yeah, as a running the lightning strike is like running the user scenario, mostly user scenario, since users are not only the users of an application. application could be user of another application.
So the next person, no, that makes perfect sense. The user could also be a bot, could also be Google, could be whatever. Okay, so this one has two questions. First of all, is what are the biggest advantage of using an effector versus the most popular solutions like Redux or something? This is literally on your perspective, like from your perspective. It doesn't have to be like a proven thing. It's like from your perspective, what are the advantages?
I made some comparisons during my first speeches because the program committee just asked me to add them, but I just don't like that slides, like seeing this red and green things like, Effector has that, Redux doesn't have that. It's just like a...
I think the main thing is that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but from my perspective,
exactly,
what could I mention as the main advantage? It reduces my mental pain on an everyday basis in comparison with the Redux, because it reduces boilerplate significantly. So I had an experience to transition an application from Redux to Effector, and the bundled has the bundle would be smaller 2 times, and the code base itself reduced by 25%. That's
really a lot just for changing state management.
just really a lot.
Yeah, that is really a lot. Okay,
and another big advantage is, I mentioned it, it's really important what is connected, not how. I just demonstrated across the whole presentation that we have really rich possibilities for connecting things. So we just could not care about, it should be called directly after this event. How will I connect that? Should I write some extra helper functions or something? No. My point is that product managers, when they are developing the ideas of a product, trying to see the audience of the project and builds scenarios based on their vision. UX designers just adding some cherry on top on that scenarios, making the just looking fit and stuff. But for some reason, front-end developers, which are pretty the part of the party, sorry for puns, but they should be led by the same things, scenarios. For some reasons, most front-end developers I've seen just, let's just pick a Redux and we'll challenge some technical stuff. Yeah, but
we'll figure it out.
yeah. And this is the problem about estimation. I made a joke about that. Imagine any demo, or planning, like, okay, let's add this feature. Hey, mate, how long will it take to just deliver it? And you just like, so I need to add some Saga, add some types to my components, made a container. So I could not predict it at all. But let's say a week. So, and the manager just had to double the estimation or maybe multiply it more than 2 times to just reach the expectations,
Yeah. It also, there's a good point to be made about the fact that it depends on what you're using, and managers a lot of the times have issues figuring that out. Like if you're using something that is hard for you to code in, like imagine that you have 2 applications and for some reason one of yours is in an Effector and the other one is in Redux. It will take you longer to do the one in Redux because you already used to that, and it's also hard to explain those things a lot of the times.
Of course, I'm skipping some kind of proficiency in terms of how we could manage these operators I just showed. In the presentation. So, but if you really understand that by its semantic value, so you just could even show your code to the manager, like the code from travel and quarantine. Like, okay, even non-technical user will understand this. Okay, when you travel, you just need to set to the quarantine. Okay, forwarding. It's pretty clear. We are forwarding messages in our messaging apps. So this is pretty the same. The main thing, just get rid of this technical implementation and being closer to the human language to improve communication by the technical tool. This is the thing.
Yeah, I think that's a general, not a general problem, but it's a big problem that we have in like being front ends or back ends. I think it's the same thing, is that we don't think about what we want to show. We think about how are we going to build this in terms of code. And in the end, it doesn't really matter. Like, that's not what people pay us for. People pay us to put these stories to life, and whatever helps you, helps you. So the last question that I have is, are there any specific features, it's not mine, it's from chat, any specific features you would like to see in Effector? Any things that you would like to see?
What do you mean? Any specific features which I mean to expect? Or
No, it's like, are there any, like, there's always some small things that you miss from certain libraries. Kind of, it's like, okay, what is there anything you would like to see implemented, basically? If the answer is no, then that's even better. That drives people more home, basically.
Yeah, my answer is no.
No? Okay, that's even better. I think we're also out of time. I'm waiting for the voice in my head to tell me. No, we have 1 more minute. So yeah, thank you so much for your talk. I can see that you're really passionate about this, and that it has really, really helped you make faster and code that makes more sense. So it makes me like, you're really passionate. And I feel like both of you, actually, you and David, have been really passionate about these things. And I think that's what transmits to people, like that you actually, it's not just a thing that you use, you're really passionate about it, and you really you want people to not feel pain, basically, when coding.
Yes.
And exactly. And yeah, and that really transmits. So thank you very much for this talk. It was really good, and you could really see your passion and how much you wanted people to just please try it out. I promise it will help your life a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think now we are out of time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I hope you come to see you again and you come back.